this flip from in-life physical crime towards cybercrime. It's happening.
One of those jobs that if everything's going perfectly and they've done their job amazingly, no one's ever going to bring it up because it's expected.
There's always a tangential connection between security and productivity.
That global IT environment in one single place for IT, so that they just got one tool that does everything for them.
Onboarding at Jumpcloud has probably been the quickest onboarding of any company I've ever joined.
IT admins who have a lot of pressure, it's about giving them security, peace of mind, and a way to transition this, knowing that their users are still going to be productive.
Hi everybody, Fintan here from Damson Cloud, and we're here in Dublin this week at actually the new Grafter building, which I really like. And I'm here with some of the team from Jumpcloud, who very kindly came over for our team and partner day, one of the first times that we've done that. And I'm here with Ed Dixon and Sean Gill. We're going to have a little conversation about the modernization of Active Directory and some of the ways that Jumpcloud can kind of help with that. So why don't we start with yourself, Ed? Do a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Jumpcloud.
Well, I'm a channel account manager for UKI and Nordics. I ended up in Jumpcloud as a recommendation from one of my former bosses, and I've been in some form of cybersecurity or software for like the last 8 years, and I did my bachelor's and master's in criminology and specialised in cybercrime.
This is what I love about our videos. I learn things about people that I didn't know before, even though we had a chat about some of that stuff, so that's cool. And Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you used to be a maths teacher, but you've left that behind you now.
Yeah, I started life doing the Teach First program, so I spent 2 years as a maths teacher. But I've left that career behind. Spent the last 7 years in technology, the last 2.5 of which have been at Jumpcloud. Was employee number 2 in Europe, so second boots on the ground, and I've seen the team grow since then, so it's been really exciting.
So you're still educating people, but you're educating them about cloud and Active Directory.
Exactly, definitely, yeah, different type of education.
Different type of education now. No, I can relate that. My parents are both teachers, so there was definitely at one stage it was like, teacher, maybe they get good holidays, but no, I think IT was for me. I think, guys, let's just kind of start with, we had a little bit of discussion about this beforehand. Like, how did Jumpcloud start as an organization? I'm really interested in that story.
Yeah, I think it's a really great story, and it really comes from our founders, Raj and Greg. They were actually running a different business, and they were doing quite well. And they hit the point where they were at a size where they're having to put in a more complex identity solution for their IT needs. And they were confronted with the choice of not managing their IT correctly, or having to buy an on-premise Active Directory from Microsoft and install an on-premise server. They were kind of amazed that there was no better alternative. Yeah. They looked around the market, they kept searching, they could find no one. So they decided, actually, this is what needs to be done. And they pivoted, started a brand new business, and decided that building an identity management service in the cloud was what they were going to do, and that was the genesis of Jumpcloud and led us to where we are today.
Wow. And how long ago was that about? Are we talking like 5 years, 10 years?
I think it's 10 years now since they had that idea, and I think Jumpcloud as a company, I think we're now about 8.5 years old.
8.5 years, yeah, so nearly at the decade mark. And it's interesting, Damson Cloud has been at the forefront of cloud and productivity and collaboration, and it's something we've helped our customers with, and we were one of the first Google Workspace partners, as you guys know, or Google Apps as it was called then. Google does like to rename things, and we've always been a company that's kind of like to push the edge of technology and sort of live on the edge of it. And I think we were kind of talking about this before, that that sort of Active Directory IT security piece is almost the last thing to move to the cloud. Do you know what I mean? And the founders of Jumpcloud really saw that frustration. How do you guys kind of feel, that is kind of going, I suppose, for a lot of companies? They've got the productivity, whether it's Microsoft or Google, and then that last piece, can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think Active Directory, as you said, is probably the last piece of the IT stack in any business that's not been moved to the cloud. And actually, when you think about it, it's probably the most fundamental piece of internal IT. So it's very strange that everything else has come before it. And I think where we're at right now is that people are definitely much more comfortable with the cloud. And most businesses are cloud first. And even legacy businesses run the majority of their IT stack in a cloud-based environment, and they're very comfortable with that. And so the move now is, how do we all get 100% to the cloud? The trust is there with the cloud, and identity is that last piece that we're moving towards.
And I think it makes sense that things like collaboration stuff move first, because they're probably that easier piece. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, companies like to focus on productivity. It's
Yeah.
just, there's always a tangential connection between security and productivity.
Yeah, but I think it's that piece as well that like it's easier to move things like productivity because it's seen as less risky maybe, or documents or something like that. But when you start thinking about your users and your devices and your managing all of that, I think it's not surprising that it has maintained itself in that traditional setup.
People get scared of making restrictions for themselves and restricting their workforces.
Yeah. And how do you guys feel that remote work has kind of accelerated this? Because like we've seen a huge acceleration from the productivity side. We're all used to doing video calls now. We're all used to working remote. How has that kind of affected your industry?
I think, it's the days long gone of the cubicle 90s office space style. Everybody comes into the office every day. There's one IT person who's got an on-premise Active Directory, and if you've got a problem, you just walk over to their desk and they come and help your PC or desktop that's on there. Now I think people are not only much more comfortable with the remote work, but they're asking for remote work, and they expect remote work in the global talent pool. And businesses, I think, as well, want to be able to hire from a global distributed talent pool everywhere. So I think the acceleration is not just driven by people themselves who want to work in that manner. It's also being driven by businesses who want to be able to access those different pools. And I think that's definitely accelerated the remote work and that journey that we're on right now.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Ed?
Elephant in the room. COVID definitely helped. But the reality
Probably
is...
the only good thing that came out of COVID was we all get to remote work now.
but the reality is it was always going in that direction. The whole idea of edge networking and edge compute and everything like that. Everything is edge now. Mobile smartphones exist. It was always going to kind of head in that direction. I think COVID kind of just gave it that nudge.
Yeah, and I think that the changes that we've seen in the modern workforce and the modern workplace now, because of things like COVID, it's just incredible, and it's amazing how much of it has stayed. Like there was that sort of moment where people are like, is it going to slingshot back or is it not? And I know there are some companies who've tried to make people go back to the office. But as we were saying before, like a lot of companies are getting rid of their office spaces office space now. But like that does lead to a challenge for IT teams and IT people. They're trying to now manage devices, as you said, that they can't just walk up to someone's desk and say, hey, do you want a hand with that? Or like I can install a piece of software on it. Now it's like, oh, you're at home. I've got to figure out a way to remote log in, or, over your home internet connection or whatever. There's so many more challenges for IT teams, like I'd love to maybe have a conversation about how does that, what are those challenges of the traditional AD model? And how is that not lending itself to supporting remote workers and this kind of modern workforce?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges from the traditional AD model is one, flexibility, right? You're very locked into one particular type of environment, which is a Microsoft environment, which means that it will only play nicely with Microsoft tools, which means that any flexibility you want for any other tools, it makes it very difficult. The second thing I think that's a major challenge is that Active Directory is simply not built for remote work. It's not built for accessing cloud applications, and it's not built for complex or more secure authentication into applications as well. It's meant for a very closed internal network, and that for a remote world is an absolute nightmare for IT staff as well. There's also just the simple cost of maintenance, storage, and running of an Active Directory in a remote world that's incredibly, incredibly difficult, particularly as we move to these distributed remote models. To have one singular place that you have to go to manage everything is very, very hard. So I think there's definitely some of the main challenges there that people are experiencing.
Yeah, and I think nowadays there's so many applications. Do you know what I mean? There's that huge IT sprawl that we're talking about, and the Active Directory doesn't always give people access to these, so then customers are looking at single sign-on, these others, and they've got to sync now their ID with the single sign-on, and there's like, a sprawl of like IT systems as well as
VPN to get into this, MFA to this. Well, which different solution that I need to access for this? And people
and one
don't
of them
want to do that.
No, and one of them doesn't connect to the SSO. So now people have to remember their password for that, but that password doesn't sync with the other device, and and that's the end user experience then becomes like poorer. Do you know what I mean? Because it's being affected by the lack of cohesiveness of the IT systems.
People want that office experience, but at home.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the route that we're moving towards. Like I think a lot of organizations have struggled with that move.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of technological change that is helping that cultural change to help that move.
Yeah.
Things like you guys helping out with workspace optimization and things like that. I think that's a lot of the direction that the industry is going in.
Yeah, and I think it kind of comes to that IT pressure on the admins. You were talking about earlier to us, Ed, before we hit record, and like we were saying earlier, we should have just been recording our conversation before the conversation. but it is a piece that like IT admins are under a huge amount of pressure. They're trying to do more with less. I mean, we have at the moment this year certainly a lot of budget cuts and things like that as well. So resources are tight. And IT admins are still expected, and IT teams are still expected to do the same and manage the same. And as you said, they have this sprawl of multiple systems, which has a cost impact.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Is your average enterprise now has 70 plus different security tools.
Yeah, and even within SMB, that's not just, it used to just be enterprises that had hundreds of applications. Now it's common for SMBs as well.
Well, 76 tools is a lot for a security operations center to look after, let alone an SMB where it's the IT manager, he runs everything, he or she, runs everything, whether it be the workspace, PowerPoint, the network working, all
the
of
router,
that. They're not just a security
the printers, the jobs body for everything.
And the thing that I think is often overlooked for IT admins is the thankless nature of the role.
I know.
It's very often, how many times a day do they get someone complaining that something's not working, and how many times do they get the celebration for everything running smoothly, right? It's one of those jobs that if everything's going perfectly and they've done their job amazingly, no one's ever going to bring it up because it's expected. And when one thing goes wrong, the weight of the whole business is going to be upon them. So I think that's definitely something we should acknowledge in terms of their pressures as well.
I know. I can't remember the exact quote, but I know Steve Jobs had some quote like that where like, when IT is sort of, the perfection of IT is sort of it melting into the background and you don't notice it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's definitely true with IT admins. If they're doing a good job, you almost don't notice. As you said, everything's just working. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly what you want from security.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the fences in front of you. You just want to be able to walk through.
Yeah, and I think it is like I always say security is that balance of security and convenience. It would be really convenient if I had no password on my email. Like I could just go to Gmail. It would just be my email, but it would be really insecure. Do you know what I mean? So that wouldn't be good. And so I think it's all that like users are often like, oh, MFA, that's an inconvenience, or two-factor authentication, whatever. But it is that extra layer of security. And when we talk about security with customers, we say that the single biggest thing you can do is to increase your security. It's just like put in place MFA. And it is incredible to me how many companies don't have that in place for all of their users. They just have it for the IT admins, and you're like, why?
Do your
so
users use applications?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Do they have access to sensitive data? Yes.
But MFA, again, and we speak about this a lot, and you talk about security, the ease of use of MFA is so important. And we think about this every time. We've just done it there. How do you log into your iPhone? You have Face ID. It's super easy, and it's a very easy way of authentication.
So convenient.
If you can provide that sort of MFA to a user in an easy, convenient way, they're very comfortable with in their personal life, suddenly you, as you said, you get that security with the convenience, which is so important for users.
I actually had an experience once where I was going through my personal accounts years ago, and I was like, I'm going to set up 2FA and everything and make sure super secure. And I did it from my Facebook account. And I was like, I'll test this out now. And I went to log in on a incognito window, and it was like, we'll send you a text. And I was like, requested the text, and I waited, and I waited, I waited. And the text never came. It came the next day. And I was like, well, that's no good. So yeah, that's like MFA not working. Do you know what I mean? Compared to like Google or, you know, Jumpcloud's prompt on the phone, you know, or an application, and you put in your code and you're done. Do you know what I mean? Or as you said, Face ID, like making that extra layer of security super easy.
Well, it's why you need things like mobile device manager as well, to sort of remove that human element of error, to make sure that they are following those security protocols. Because we may have to edit this out, but I used to work at a very large security company, and we did an internal study around if we allowed users not to use the VPN to access, how many accessed it. It was around 80% didn't use the VPN to give them the option to.
And I mean, like, it's because it's inconvenient. Like, nobody wants to. You know, it's an extra layer of security that's kind of built around the traditional model of the moat, but we were, you know, and that like just build a wall around your IT as opposed to the cloud that's more like, you know, user and devices. How do you guys kind of feel like this pressure on the IT, this remote work, the sprawl of devices and apps? Like, people have more devices now to manage than they've ever had before. It used to be like, here is your work laptop. We have put, you know, the security on it, and it's completely locked down, and there you go. Now people are like, I have my mobile phone, I have my personal device, I want to log into my email at home. You know, so the IT, it's not just the remote work. It's the remote work, it's the devices, it's the sprawl of applications. How do you guys feel this is, you know, from your conversations with customers, how has this affected their ability to get work done?
Hampered it massively. It adds tons of time from people just trying to do their job. That's the whole issue with people want that original office experience. Because when you went into the office, you didn't have to log into a million different things because you were just given that access. You
were in the office and it was it was simple.
And people want that extended into the cloud. They don't want to have all of those restrictions, and it adds issues with users not wanting to use the security tools, which is bad, because if the users aren't using them, you're just paying for a very expensive graphical user interface.
A very expensive box ticking exercise. Yes, we've done that, but we haven't really, because it's not implemented.
Exactly. And when it comes to managing them, people are always the biggest threat vector when it comes to security. Even IT admins. And if you give an IT admin like 70 plus different tools that they have to monitor, that they have to be trained on, that they have to chase individual support tickets for.
It's unfair to expect that they could,
Like, people are human. They make mistakes. I wouldn't have a job.
We talk about it with customers when we do a security review, which is a big seller for our services. And we'll go into a customer at like 100 seats or 200 seats, and they'll have like 8 super admins. Guys, you don't need this many. Like, a super admin can completely delete your Google Workspace account. I'm not a super admin on Damson Cloud's account, and I'm the CEO. Like, you know, this doesn't make sense from a security standpoint. You know, so that piece of locking things down, and you know, it makes a lot of sense.
I think what we hear a lot is from IT admins, what they're hearing from their users is they're so used to the convenience of their own personal life.
I know.
So it's so easy now for them to access every application through a Face ID, etc. They're so used to having this quick, instant access to everything they need, maybe disregarding whether it's safe or not. And for an IT admin, they're being asked to match that level of convenience, but also with this, you know, incredible burden of security. And so I think that's why at Jumpcloud we're working on things like personal device trust, so that you can use your personal device securely to log into work applications, working on things like biometric MFA, working on things like easy to build zero trust security frameworks, so that the convenience can be built in for users while the IT admin can retain that degree of control, because that is the balance, is getting people productive while keeping your business secure.
And that's what you're trying to get to, isn't it? Like, that's the gold standard, where you can have the convenience. I was showing you guys my new laptop. I was setting it up last night, and the Mac, when I signed in, it was like I was signing into my Google account, and it said, do you want to use your authentication key that I'd set up? And I was able to just scan a QR code and do the Face ID, and it signed me into my Google account. And I was like, that is so convenient. Like, that's amazing. Do you know what I mean? So, like you say, that biometric piece as well. It's taking away. It's moving towards our passwordless, access.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, that's something that we've rolled out at Jumpcloud that we've already got, which is one of the powers of Jumpcloud's product is because we're controlling identity, access, and devices. We can leverage your device and your biometrics in combination to remove the password and as I said, remove that massive threat vector of the user.
FYI, I love the passwordless. Onboarding at Jumpcloud is probably been the quickest onboarding of any company I've ever joined. Like it's really, really like they put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, and I think like that's we're the same as well. I'm trying to remember Sean's phrase: "Drink your own champagne."
Drink your own champagne.
Yeah, we're using that instead of the dog food one. Definitely, I'm going to start using that phrase. But yeah, we're drinking our own champagne at Damson. We use obviously Google Workspace, we always have, but now we're using Jumpcloud internally. And I think it is really important to utilize those tools. We never really sell a tool that we haven't used ourselves. And unless a customer kind of comes to us and said, hey, we want to buy this. I think for us, it's really important to understand the solutions that we're selling. In a real way. So I think it's great that, like you say, it's being used internally. You can see the impact as an end user, not just as an IT admin. When we kind of look at like the modernization of the Active Directory and the types of companies that use it, like we see a lot of digital natives, obviously, that set up, and we have a lot of digital natives on our books. They tend to use Google Workspace. They tend to, when they set up nowadays, to set up on these modern cloud-based solutions. They don't kind of go for the traditional ones. But what does that modernization journey look like for the traditional business? So if if there's people out there watching the traditional business, they have this Active Directory, in-house, what does that journey look like for them?
I will always caveat and say no one's journey is the same because everybody's Active Directory is often built slightly differently, often over a number of years. But there's definitely a few key things that we see and we try and work with our customers on, and we try and make that journey as smooth as possible. So I think the first thing for us is that there's definitely going to be a hybrid phase. And that's one of the nice things about Jumpcloud is that Jumpcloud can take over management of your Active Directory so that you don't have to do this huge pull the rug, Active Directories totally remove, switch over. Okay. You've still got that security where you can layer in Jumpcloud as a source of truth. You can build your cloud applications into Jumpcloud while maintaining Active Directory as a backup. And we then usually advise that people go across in groups by groups. So start with the users that are going to be least effective, and that's often your front office workers who are probably working off mostly cloud applications anyway, and then moving across the groups over a period of time.
Yeah, those that are kind of least affected by
an Active Directory removal. They don't have as many dependencies.
Okay.
The other element as well that we usually start with is often people have their machines, particularly if they're Windows machines, AD bound. So their machine is connected to the Active Directory as well. Well, the first part is we would want to remove any of that connection for the machines to Active Directory. Okay. Then you've got a fully managed device that can move. It doesn't need to be connected. It can connect and verify off Jumpcloud's identity in the cloud. So those steps are pretty key.
So Jumpcloud is becoming that single source of truth, and we've seen this in setups with customers where you're pulling in the information from Microsoft, from AD, from Google, and that's the fantastic thing about you guys. You're acting as this single source of truth. You can do, by sync, direct bi-directional sync, which is fantastic. And like you said, it makes it easy for that transition, that change management to kind of happen.
Yeah, definitely. We're making sure that you can keep the tools that you've got in place for a period of time so that the change management is easy and smooth. Yeah. It's not some giant switch that causes a massive
big bang
of user disruption. And that's something we see a lot with businesses who are maybe more traditional, who are growing through acquisition or merger, is that they're often inheriting IT stacks that don't mesh well with what they've got in place. Yeah. Well, Jumpcloud allows them to combine all of that and then allows them to simplify that going forward. And you mentioned cloud natives, right? We've got some great cloud native companies who are growing and surpassing legacy businesses. And as they grow and surpass, they're acquiring these legacy businesses and they're saying, hey, we've been in the cloud since the beginning. What have you guys got? And they kind of open the door to a store cupboard with a huge blinking AD and they're like, oh my God, what do we do now? And
just close the cupboard. Close the cupboard. Walk away. Walk away.
But that's something that we can help them with by allowing them to get that business onto their cloud environment and get rid of that AD as quickly as possible. So it is always going to be that measured approach. And as you said, change management to allow you to phase out AD. You can do a big bang switch if you like. But for most IT managers, it's that phased approach and that comfort that they can take it step by step is what allows them to make that.
And I think with that back end security piece, that actually makes a lot more sense. And it's interesting because we're more used to the big bang rollout with Google, because that's how a Google rollout is recommended to do. Just, you can do it the way you're kind of talking about there. But more traditionally, it's that everybody same time, because it's the email system and dual delivery, and it's complex to kind of do it piece by piece. But I think with IT security backend systems, that actually makes more sense and makes, gives the IT teams more confidence in, okay, I can just do this, this set of users, these devices, move them, next group, and makes it a little bit more palatable, maybe,
Yeah, definitely. And it's a serious maneuver. No one is sitting here and saying this is,
it's easy.
It's easy. It's things that need consideration, it needs planning, but it's about giving. Already, as we've discussed, IT admins who have a lot of pressure, it's about giving them security, peace of mind, and a way to transition this, knowing that their users are still going to be productive.
And I think, we talked about the sprawling apps for the users, but we also have that on the IT admin side as well. I think you guys also help with that consolidation piece, which I think is quite interesting. You're not just, we've obviously talked about AD, and that's obviously a huge piece. It's your primary goal, the founder's primary goal at the beginning, but you're also doing password management, SSO, there's a whole stack of different things that you guys are encompassing. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that consolidation helps some of your IT admins?
Yeah, I think it's really that genesis from the original idea about identity is once you've moved identity to the cloud and you're controlling identity in one place, to make it as easy as possible for an IT admin is to attach everything to that identity.
Yeah.
Because once it's attached to a central identity, you can onboard once and the identity will sort everything out. You can offboard and everything is closed down.
Yeah.
And that's where Jumpcloud has gone with obviously using the identity to provision access securely, whether that's through SSO, whether that's through our password manager, whether that's adding additional MFA, whether it's connecting to legacy resources through a cloud LDAP service, so you don't need to run Active Directory for that.
Yeah.
Whether it's connecting to wireless resources to a cloud radius service. So again, it's all being attached. And as you said, the last piece of that is giving people access to their device with the same password. Once you're doing that, you might as well manage that device. You mentioned as well that as we've listened to IT admins and what they're looking for, we've also got the ability to remote into a device. So what we're trying to do is support.
That was the last one I forgot.
Yeah, support that global IT environment in one single place for IT, so that they've just got one tool that does everything for them. That's what we want, and build that, hopefully, that cloud system to do it.
Yeah, and I think what's great is what you guys, in your offering, you can buy the individual pieces, but you can buy the whole.
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts. We've got a solution that can play into. We want to meet the customers where they are.
Yeah.
We understand if you've signed a 5-year agreement with someone, you're probably not going to be able to get rid of that product. But that's fine. We've got a broad portfolio within the Jumpcloud platform that we offer, so we can fit in with their specific use cases. Start with MDN. Start with single sign-on directory. It's really kind of up to you and the customer.
And then they can move as they feel confident and comfortable into those other areas. Which makes a lot of sense. I think like next we might just kind of touch on some of the specific challenges for those SMEs. Do you know what I mean? Because I think it's different from the enterprise customers. With like 5,000-10,000 seats and massive IT teams. What do you guys kind of see from talking to customers as the major challenges for those SME and SMB customers?
Lots of challenges. Lots of challenges.
It's like, where to begin?
The two main ones, it's not having enough money, aka budgets, and not having enough resources, aka people.
Or time to do and that's the thing. That
that is a metric of that within that, the resources of people. Their time is important. Their time being spent, your IT manager, especially an SME, like we mentioned earlier, they're managing all these different tools. They do things that help the business make money.
Yeah.
The more time your IT admin is spending doing your IT staff are spending on security, they're not spending that on making your business more money, more productive, more profitable.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting from our perspective on the collaboration side. We have seen IT teams say that there's a shift when they move to the cloud and when they move to products like Google, that they're not seen as the break fix guys anymore. They're seen as, how can you help me be more productive in my business, or in my day-to-day job? And people are coming to them and saying, how can you help me improve my workflows or whatever? So that's what IT teams want to be working on. When they start having to move back towards break fix or manage someone's logging in to some device. I mean, we had some conversations when you guys came to meet our team yesterday about some people's onboarding in some companies, and they were like 2 or 3 weeks, they still had no access to the applications to do their job. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a crazy waste of the IT admin's time.
There's a real cost to it. Ask your users that how much are they paid an hour? And you can figure in the cost.
And they're just sitting there doing nothing for 2 or 3 weeks. And that's just like one example. Do you know what I mean? We had another discussion from a company that shall remain nameless of somebody going in and out of the office and having to physically bring their desktop with them, which was hilarious and insane. But like, we can kind of laugh about these little sort of anecdotes, but there's hundreds of them. Do you know what I mean? From companies, from SMEs particularly, where they've come up with these crazy, workarounds to things because of the restrictions of this traditional system. We
spoke earlier a little bit about the change that's happened in the way all of us work, right? But I also think there's a fundamental part of, you picked up on it there, Fintan, about IT's role and how IT needs to view their own role. You are no longer the break fix, keep everything sorted. You are now a major driver of productivity and growth for the business. And I think for a lot of IT professionals, they've gone through that shift, and that's how they view themselves now. They view themselves as a core engine for growth and productivity and growth of a company. And they're looking for ways to do that and to add to the bottom line, not just to keep everyone working. They're looking for ways to get them working better as well.
And I think we've seen a shift in how IT is viewed from being like sitting at the C-suite level. Do you know what I mean? I can remember when I started my journey in IT 20 years ago. I know I don't look that old. The IT manager, the roles were like IT admin, IT manager. Maybe you got an IT director, but the idea of, certainly in that mid-sized organization, it was only CTOs and CIOs in that very, very large companies that worked on strategy and stuff. I think it's interesting how that shift has changed over the last 2 decades, where now IT has a seat at the table because, as you said, it's seen as the innovator rather than just like, oh, this is a bill we have to pay. Like, this is a cost center. Yes, it's a cost center, but also it's driving productivity. And I think you actually brought it up a few times before with the team yesterday. What's the cost of doing nothing? What's the cost of not looking at security? How, like, if you had a breach, what is the cost of that as a small business? And security is becoming way more important for small businesses because they're being targeted.
In my career, I've heard so many horror stories. Like, I started out selling to small businesses, security solutions, companies like Fortinet and Cisco, and it's genuinely really quite heartbreaking when you hear from people. You're an SME business, for example. This isn't a real case. I
will caveat.
But you're a small business. You're a physiotherapist, right? All your transactions go through your website. These people don't have like a card machine or anything like that. When their website's taken down, that's their entire business. And that's like the mortgage to pay their house. If they have private healthcare for their kids, things like there's a genuine, real like cost to that. And it's SMEs are getting targeted much. It used to be the case where it was you'd get a team of hackers solely going after a massive enterprise. But
which obviously you still do. But
you've got things like script kits now. Anyone get
The-
the ability to actually do these kind of crimes now in the cyber world is much easier than it's ever been.
There sadly has been a democratization of cybercrime as well.
And like, honestly, they have like SLAs, and you can call them up if you've had you can buy DDoS attacks, and if you don't get, they have a support line, and sometimes like some of their SLAs and their support lines. They're better than a lot of other companies, like security companies. Like, 24/7 support for your malware attack.
Yeah, it's weird how that's become more accessible to people. You know, it's so bizarre, but like it is. It's so much easier for companies to commit cybercrime now, or for individuals to commit cybercrime. So it means that it's much more likely that SMBs and smaller companies will be targeted. I saw a recent report from Google. The partners got sent was around. They'd surveyed hundreds and hundreds of SMBs, and it's a huge concern now. Do you know what I mean? Because everything is, people are working remotely, and the pressure on IT, all of the things that we've kind of talked about. I think that need for control, that freedom piece as well, is something we were discussing. How do you guys feel that your customers balance that? When they're coming from that traditional side, their users want freedom, and that's why you end up with shadow IT and things like that. How does Jumpcloud kind of help with that balance? I don't know who wants to jump in.
It's like walking a tightrope. Is the best way to describe it. You have to, when it comes to freedom of what users want to access, it needs to be based on what is relevant to them. As much as we want people to be able to access everything, they've got access to your business. And people, unfortunately, are fallible and they make mistakes. Like shadow IT, Sharon opens up sets up marketing emails to her her work email. That's gonna somebody could be a potential dodgy website and there's so much.
All
of
it takes is click of a link, and
I think from a Jumpcloud perspective, what we're trying to do to make that easier is, one, give users the most convenient experience possible within the framework that an IT admin sets. So for us, it's built around things like the user portal. So every application you need is visible from day one, and you can log in with that. If you've got an application that doesn't use SSO, you can put a URL bookmark in so that people can use a password manager that's built in for them to save. Doing things like giving people the same password for everywhere to log in, but then giving the IT admin the ability to set the complexity rules and enforce MFA where is needed. And then, because we control everything, I think building those zero trust security frameworks. So giving people a lot of flexibility if they meet your criteria. So if you're on your work laptop, you can get straight in. If you're not on your work laptop, here's the extra test we're going to make you do.
Yeah, it's factoring in things like BYOD. You really have to factor in that now, because, like you said, you want to attract talent, and not everybody wants to use an Android phone.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
We have a mix of users in the room right now, some of which love their Android phones. Some of us like our iPhones. So these people are behind the camera, by the way. I think that need of balance of control, is really important. You get the amount of shadow IT now is huge, and that we're talking about the proliferation of apps, but also then the user will move outside of the system. If they can't do what they want within the confines of what they've been given in the company, they'll just set up a Dropbox account or a personal Google account. We come across this all the time, the personal Google accounts,
Set up their own personal VPN to watch Spanish Netflix.
Exactly.
It's like that.
What do you guys feel are the biggest security concerns within our industry, within the kind of IT space?
Unfortunately,
there's a long exhale.
That was a big deep breath.
Well, there's a difference between what people think are the most common threats and what are the actual most common threats. I think what people are most scared of at the moment is anything to do with AI and generative AI and hacking. But it's That's not good.
That's down the road.
That's down the road. Well, it will partly be influenced in this, which is going to be the main cause and the main issue. Is this right? We're democratizing IT and security, but like you mentioned earlier, so are the criminals.
Yeah.
And
it's making it easier for them to generate content or spam messages or
exactly.
It's
that massive increase in the number of people committing these crimes. It's that slowly over time, and this is where I'm pulling out my criminology background, this flip from in-life physical crime towards cybercrime. It's happening. And it's not necessarily the complexity of threats, right? Threats will get more complex. That's just the nature of any kind of war on crime. They're always going to try and evolve. But the major issue is going to be the volume. It's only increasing. We have seen little dips in things like malware, but ransomware attacks are going up every year. The amount that's being having to be paid for these ransomware attacks is increasing every year. And the easier this becomes for people to actually do, that's where it's not just going to be, like we said, the massive enterprises, and it's not even going to be just the SMEs. It's going to be your mum and dad at home and things like that. That's going to be the real big evolution within cybercrime.
Yeah, targeting of old people, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Like that is
It's
the worst
horrible.
possible thing you can do. How do you guys feel customers stay ahead of this?
I think we've just said it a bit. It's kind of an analogy I like, which is if there's 5 of you in the forest and a bear runs at you, you don't have to be faster than a bear. You have to be faster than the other 4 people.
Bears are faster than people think.
But I think that's the attitude I think companies need to take to cybersecurity, is that you are not going to get ahead of these complex threat actors. And as Ed said, that's becoming more and more democratized. The most important thing is to make sure that you're not the open window for the burglar.
Yeah.
It's putting in place those steps that keep you ahead of your competitors. And in a cybersecurity race, your competitors are other businesses who are not putting in place those steps, which makes them a much more valuable target.
And just that they'll move on. The burglar moves on to the next place.
It's not worth it.
Next
door, it's super easy. I'll do that. I think the other part for me, for the SMEs need to do is, as Ed said, threats are increasing, right? I think breaches, and particularly supplier breaches, cause a huge amount of hassle. No business is perfect. It may happen to every single business because of the variance of threats. What you need to make sure, though, is you're working with suppliers who handle that effectively, who communicate it to you effectively, and make sure that you're kept in the loop at all times. If there's any moments where that's not being done, that's going to have an adverse effect for a small business for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because we talked about zero trust earlier. Actually, I have a weird sort of analogy for zero trust. That's it's a bit of a dad analogy. When I was younger, my dad was like paranoid about security in the house. And so he would lock, when we would leave, would lock every single room in the house, had its own lock. And so if somebody, it's actually, I mean, it's context-aware access. Because basically, if somebody got into the house, they only got into one room. They couldn't get into any of the other rooms. All of the rooms had external, like really good external locks on them that he'd had fitted. And so we would lock all of the doors. Before you would leave, you would go through this, locking all the, and then lock the front door, which was obviously double bolted. But it's interesting because I think Jumpcloud and Google and those sort of tools, it's actually not unlike that of like locking everything away. So someone gets access to something, that's it. You only got access to this. That's the idea of that zero trust. Now you don't, that traditional model of build a moat around the castle. Yeah. You get in, now you've got access to everything, Which
I think that's a nice thing about Jumpcloud. You mentioned that there's different levels, right? Your dad was locking every room, and if you want to be that secure because that's how you feel, maybe because your house is incredibly valuable, which I hope it was, you had lots of nice things.
Definitely wasn't. I don't know why.
You've got that feeling of security. That's great, but maybe what you want is, I'm going to use a good, nice equivalent here. Maybe MFA. Maybe you've got a Ring doorbell.
Yeah.
Maybe you double lock the door, but when someone rings on the doorbell, there's a video so that you can see. It's someone from it's a neighbor from next door.
It's okay. It's the postman. It's grand.
And you can set that up as well, and that's good enough for your business. Or maybe what you want is, you set up something whereby actually when your child is home alone, they double lock the door, they don't answer it until they've got a Ring doorbell. You know, you've got that flexibility, and that's how IT should be.
Yeah.
You can set your own risk in a way that's convenient for everyone, but keeps them safe.
How do you guys feel security changes for those traditional companies when they move to the cloud? What's the biggest shift for them in their thinking?
I think for me, the big one, particularly if they're migrating off Active Directory, is the ease. The ease with which they can now move to, as you said, a context-based security model and not dependent on following these very specific rules, which I think is massive for them. They can start to build a personalized bespoke service for different users or for their company, which is really, really powerful. I think as well, the main thing for them in security as they move towards a cloud-based model is also that there's an ease of mind and a comfort with them, knowing that they're working with cloud-based solutions who are communicating with them, who are best in breed. And I think for IT admins, that's a big weight off their mind and a degree of trust they can start to have in their IT environment as it is.
Fantastic. I think, guys, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thanks for taking the time to chat to us and particularly for coming over to surprisingly sunny Dublin.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
I've enjoyed my time.
Yeah,
It's not quite as nice as Cork, but we have to get that in.
We had to try and get that in. I tried to cut him short there so that we could keep Dublin as the top, but it is what it is. We have a man with Cork blood in him, so he can't help it. No, but listen, thanks for taking the time to chat to us today. It was really insightful, and hopefully you guys at home have found that insightful as well. If you're not subscribed to Damson Cloud's YouTube channel, please hit or smash that subscribe button, as they say. If you're watching us on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, please do give us a follow and tune in next week because we have a video every week. Thanks very much.